The Artist, Time of Tempests, Year 3. Do you think I should say something? By the time he had asked, some of the awkward energy had already left the air, but Zhao was used to the glassy-eyed faces of soldiers, and at first he had thought the clouded look on their somewhat taciturn host's face was just wariness. There was something else though, in her glance towards the young witch, and before he had had a chance to figure out what it was, Ruslana had looked away from Lorelei and sat down as readily as if she was used to hosting some kind of fancy, freewheeling deal like this. Zhao rubbed his chin thoughtfully, having had the foresight to dodge Zambi's attempts to poke him. They might not have been intentional attempts, because she had also been reaching for the fruit jelly things. They looked pretty good, he had to admit. Finally, frustrated by his smooth moves, Zambi shook from side to side and murmured sagely. The question is not what you should say, but what you should do. Any wisdom of which might have been cheapened by the slight laughter that so sounded like leaves in the breeze. Zhao gulped back air, and decided it probably wasn't important. Everyone seemed happy, after all, and really, that was his only concern. So, what were you trying to get my attention for, Zams? He whispered to his side, trying to figure out what to immortalize next on the wall. It wasn't his best mural, largely because he had only just met Lorelei, and Ruslana was kind of a mystery to him. But Bones had recommended that they corroborate their stories thus far, and perhaps try to record the history of the place, such as it was. And so, they had. The changing of seasons, trials, loss, growth, and death. There were no words to illustrate it, but if anyone else came here, yeah, they'd get the gist of it. Zhao frowned, and realized a few moments later he had been biting his lip again, wiping some of the blood and spit from his face. This was going to be a hassle. Well, nothing too important, ahaha. But if we could talk louder. That was enough to get his attention, and Zhao gave her a careful glance, not wanting to look like he was worried. Thankfully, Zambi seemed to get the message, and he heard her dashing by as she muttered a quiet thanks. Again. Perhaps he'd risk one of those candied fruits in the meantime. He wasn't sure what card game Ruslana had been playing beforehand, probably solitaire, but this was a nice, comfy table, sturdy enough to hold paint and food alike without any real worries, and roomy enough that everyone could sit at it as equals. Not that he was going to leave his paints on the table when there was food around, of course, but, he mused with a slight smile, it was the sort of thing you would expect from someone in the military. And then Zhao thought of home, and wondered, well, it had been 2 years now, hadn't it? Probably wasn't much of home left. Looking glum, chum. Sit down, make merry. Victory is supposed to be sweet, and not all torn up inside of you. Koza seemed to be taking victory, although Zhao really hadn't felt that helping people out should be called victory, really well. Something about her manner reminded him a little of the pamphlets they had seen around the yard, full of advice and success stories that couldn't have been too successful, or they wouldn't be on whatever yard they had gotten to. Risking a glance at Bones for moral support, and wondering if he shouldn't just excuse himself and check in on Zambi, Zhao gave the older woman a big grin, which she returned, clapping him on the back with that expected yet still surprising force. Sorry for looking glum. Guess it's just my face right now. A lot to think about, you know how it is. She nodded, sniffing and waving one of the tiny candies around in the air as she spoke. It was captivating, in a slightly strange sort of way, and Zhao wanted to tell her to just eat the darn thing already, but maybe it helped her think. That I do indeed. But there's always time for being glum in the future. As far as I can tell, the new military forces of this place have everything under control, and since they've taken it on themselves to safeguard us. Koza snapped into the candy, then looked moderately disappointed that it was more chewy than brittle. Darn, that wasn't what I was expecting at all. Think I chipped a tooth, ahaha. You should be more careful with yourself. Zhao cautioned, not entirely feeling up to the challenge of matching her Caprine commentaries at the moment. Besides, Something, perhaps a dream, or a fragment of a dream, was trying to tell him something.
You might be surprised at how careful I am. I was concerned about you, actually. But, uh-oh, better look sharp, seems as if those two have stopped making awkward faces at one another.
Ruslana had been attempting to make eye contact with him and Bones for some time now, and perhaps even mumbling after her initial introductions. After a while, she cleared her throat and coughed, sounding as if she might have had a lingering cold from the chill of the prior season. Had she really been standing watch over this place the entire time? Even with the proper gear? Zhao shuddered inwardly. If this was permanent, he hoped it numbed him to temperatures. He had had quite enough of those. Outwardly though. Smiling, Zhao tried to get a good read of her. She was military all right. That stiff posture, the slight wariness in her every step. She looked afraid to smile for too long, that way he was worried he got with Bones and Zemby when he wasn't thinking too clearly. Only, she looked like she might feel that way all the time. Obviously, the thing that he noticed most was the missing eye, but, well, other than that she seemed to be pretty fit, and a little pale. Her eyes had well-concealed bags under them. Right. She might be military, but she was cool.
Proper introduction time. So, you've met me, Bones, and Zemby, but she's out at the moment. As cool as this place is, I'd feel pretty cramped up in here 24/7. More than in a cave.
Ruslana buried her head in her hands a microsecond after she had responded, looking mortified, which made no sense, because he had found it pretty funny, but...
Sorry, was a joke, haven't slept. No, even if it wasn't a joke, I've been feeling like I climbed up from rock bottom recently.
He could hear the snort from between her hands, and felt a little proud of himself.
My intel somehow missed that you three had been hanging out there, so I guess I felt slated to make an inopportune joke. T1T happen again.
It took him a while to see what she had done, but...
So, Zhao. Bones. Brass tacks, here. I don't know how we missed each other for so long, but that place you built back up. I and a friend passed through it earlier. You're doing good things there, even though I'm not certain there'll be much left by the time this is all said and done.
Almost instantly she had snapped back to whatever she was thinking about, and Zhao wondered what else was on the soldier's mind. Still, even if she was trained for this sort of thing, she wasn't that much older than them.
Miss, I'm not so sure about that. There are a lot of people out there who probably just went deep into the foothills and caves as things have changed here on the island. I do recall, I think, that there was a village or two of proper human settlers.
But Bones' memory failed him as the skeleton clattered his teeth forlornly, trying to find something uplifting that neither he nor Zhao could provide. Thankfully, Ruslana seemed to have found what she was looking for, though not from them, precisely.
You three have been through a lot, I'm sure. You know, we have a lot of room here, and no real duties or anything, but if you wanted to stay around for a bit, we'd have to hold a consultation, but you can bet I'll think about it.
Zhao beamed at her, and was glad to see her do the same. Maybe she'd... No way, had she been worried about them? He couldn't imagine why. Besides everyone getting sick, and Bones being shattered that one time and... And then, Zhao froze. They all had almost died, numerous times.
Ha, ha, ha.
Gulping for the second time in minutes, he was glad his face wasn't betraying the sudden rush of anxiety he felt at the moment. And pride too. They hadn't died, obviously. But... Wow. And things weren't getting better, he reminded himself. Right. Well, maybe that was what Zemby had wanted to talk about? Ruslana had already started to talk to Koza, so that was as good a time as any.
Do you mind if I go take a walk outside?
The soldier turned from where she was shooting the older woman a strange, steely-eyed expression, and smiled at him once again.
Please, do as you like. I wouldn't go too far.
He nodded his understanding as she trailed off. Zhao had experienced quite enough traumatic events recently, and had no desire to add to them. As he stood up, not quite feeling the usual creak of his muscles as he did, which was weird, he could feel Bones' hand against his shoulder. Well, the heaviness of it, at least.
Zhao.
Bones was silent for a moment, then spoke very quietly.
Think carefully. I'll let you two make this decision.
Bones didn't have eyes to see. He had sockets, and changes of tones, hesitation in his shoulders when he was uncertain, firmness of posture when he was excited or steadfast, and a warm, nurturing quality to his voice when he was happy. Zhao could hear well the warning there, and it wasn't one he liked to think about, but he couldn't shake it either. This was all too similar to home. This felt familiar, and dangerous. All the things he had wanted to build into their settlement, their town. It was a lot to think about, and Zhao didn't have any good answers. Right now, at least. Taking Bones' hand and clasping it tightly, Zhao tried to think of something cool and encouraging to say, but drew a blank, face semi-frozen between optimism and uncertainty. Luckily, the same way he had grown used to reading Bones, the skeleton seemed to have picked up his mannerisms, too, having a peculiar quiet laughter as he shook that made some of Zhao's concern melt away. Outside, the winds were blowing in a gentle gale, a prelude to storms that had been, and would come. The ground had grown bare. Still grey and sparse, yes, but bare all the same. Occasionally cold raindrops fell, mixing with hail and moments of empty skies above as if the weather itself did not know what to be, but that was the island, wasn't it? Zambi had been teetering from foot to foot nervously, and looked ecstatic to see him, traipsing around one of the sunken steel prefabs to grab him by the waist. It was weird not feeling like he was going to burn up, or vomit, or itch all week. But not terrible, either.
Sorry, Zhao. Bro, this is important though. It's pretty serious. I already talked to Bones about it, so. Bones, how? When? Are you capable of teleporting or something?
Not able to help himself, Zhao laughed and wiggled free of Zambi's grasp. She looked pretty proud and a little miffed at the same time.
When military bro lady? Lady bro soldier? Air. That soldier went past, I whooshed. And then Bones and I had a nonverbal communication. Heh. Impressed. You know it.
Zambi put her hands against her hips and rustled her hair in the wind. Zhao just glad to see that smile, unencumbered by sickness or their own concerns. For now, at least.
Okay, so, tell me the super mysterious gossip that you two have been sharing non-verbally. Do me a favor though, and level with me, if you're feeling we need to leave, now.
Flinching, Zambi waved her hands excitedly in front of her, wheeling them so quickly that she, nearly, fell back against the steel habitat. Fortunately, a puddle of melted snow tripped her up instead, and Zambi quickly rose back to her feet, shaking water and chuckling darkly.
Definitely not that, Zhao. No. It's more that, well, I've been spying.
Tapping her nose, or possibly nose analog, knowingly, Zambi waited for a comedic overreaction that he wasn't going to give her, well, not right now, anyway. As weird as it sounded, the idea of her spying on people seemed oddly sensible. Once you got used to her complete lack of subtlety.
Spying, hey? On whom, and did you find anything?
Zhao gave an unusual half shrug, trying to look as if he was implying concerning stuff without being concerned about it. He had no desire to doubt or suspect anyone here of anything bad, but...
Yeah.
She took his hand and started walking with him, as their habit was, and already bracing him for bad news. It was comforting to stroll around the half-buried and slightly dampened buildings like this, the foundry still occasionally belching smoke, presumably fed by industries moved to the tunnel complexes below. Zambi sighed, and stared up at the foundry, scrunching up her face.
Koza met up with a weird guy. Do you ever meet people, and they seem really great, but when you look back at your strategic junk food reserves, they're all gone and there isn't even a note promising I'm sorry or something? Can't say that I have, but I think I understand where you're going. That's the kind of feel I got from him.
She wobbled a little, and he tried to steady her, but she kept wobbling. After a while, he started to shake a bit, too, not just from motion, but a kind of unpleasantly familiar nausea that he had been glad enough to have forsaken.
I didn't hear the early bits too well, but Koza asked some pretty weird stuff.
They were silent a bit more, and then Zemby burbled a whole slew of things all at once.
I mean, she's probably fine, and it was just the sort of stuff you might ask Bones, right? And she was so helpful when she and Boleslava came over, so I don't want to judge her or anything, but it was weird, and I don't think they noticed me at all, and...
Zemby stopped herself suddenly, and kind of slumped against him. Not for the first time did he find it entirely unnatural, but managed to brace himself against her despite the strange fear he felt that she might just sink down into the ground.
Guess I'm just feeling a little bit foolish, is all. Yeah. Me too.
Of course it wouldn't be simple. It never was.
Do you think any of us are in danger? You, me, Bones? Maybe Lorelei and, the Dark Lord? I get the feeling Ruslana can take care of herself. No, I don't feel like she was really planning on doing anything weird at all. It seemed kind of casual, is the thing. That's what weirded me out the most. Back where you came from, did people just ask about, murder?
He wanted to say no, of course, but...
Sometimes. Wow.
After a few moments, Zemby propped herself up with a great deal of effort, hands behind her back.
Maybe she meant it in kind of a cool, caring way. But she asked that guy what had happened if she killed that old guy. I don't think she meant Bones, though, so? He just laughed, and she laughed too, and then he kinda wasn't there, and I decided to hide with the sprouts until she wandered off. Hey. From what I've spoken to her about, I can see her being the sort of woman to decide on something preemptively, so... maybe she's concerned about us. If that old man is supposed to be the wizard guy everyone else has met, though, I don't see how killing him stops that rampaging dragon.
They were silent again, and Zemby sprawled out amongst the dirt, looking skywards. After a while, he joined her, wishing on some level that they didn't have to go back.
Do you think we should stay here? I mean, I don't know what to make of anything. I don't want to doubt anyone. If possible, I just want to be friends with everyone. That's all I've ever wanted, really. Would it be okay if we went back, after all of this? I don't mind visiting Amazon, bro. Is that what you're settling on? No. She also seems kinda demure, in a weird way. Confidentially demure. I wanna think of something that captures that. But I also... yeah. I'm not sure I feel safe here, either.
Zemby exhaled in relief, and then pat the soil with her red-rooted hand.
You can feel them struggling for life, right? A little. Not too much. Oh, geez. Sorry, Chow. No. I didn't mean that, I just, humans aren't plants. Probably. Well, they are. They really want to live, to grow, to taste the sunlight and rise up, to blossom.
Zhao stretched back against the soil, and he couldn't feel the plants, or the soil, just the sensation of firmness against his back. Terra firma, some small part of his mind commented, and he smiled.
I guess that's true of all of us, so maybe we're all part plant. We'll just look out for each other and be friendly, then.
She took his hand, and though it no longer burned, neither did he really feel hers against his, either. Then again, sometimes you didn't need to feel something physically to know it was there.
You're an awesome spy, Zemby. Don't let your mystery life of espionage get you down, though. Promise. Promise. Should we go back?
Far away he could see distant orbs of lightning, or perhaps tiny will-o-wisps. Regardless, the strange stillness in the air felt like a precursor to more violent weather than he was willing or dressed to deal with. And though Zemby had been bearing with the changes in temperature and force like a champion.
Let's roll on out. I want to see if I can communicate this to Bones subverbally, too. Then we can finish up that mural.
He wasn't entirely happy with the outcome. Weird melancholies aside, he liked Koza. She seemed reliable in her own way, and he didn't want to worry about her plotting anything, even if it was possibly for a good cause, or what she saw as a good cause. Was he supposed to cling to his resolution, or abandon it? Was that what the dreams had been about, or one fragment of it? Was it as simple and binary as that, or had there been some deeper warning? Was he overthinking things? Thankfully, before he could feel the weight of it all crashing down upon him, Zemby had pried herself free from his, unintentionally firm, he noticed with some shock, grip, and cartwheeled down into the bunker tunnel with a wide grin and an audible crash. Zhao smiled, even as he flexed his fingers a few times to try to get the feeling back into them. Thumb, pointer, index, other pointer. Little finger? Was that it? Laughing, he navigated the bars down with a great deal more care than Zemby had, taking note that the tray of sweets had all but vanished, to be replaced with steaming noodles and cucumber soda. Chapter end.